Oh, there is. Good evening. I call this meeting of the Duncanville Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board of Trustees is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, the board will go into closed session. Good evening. I call this meeting of the Duncanville Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board of Trustees is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting had been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. There is no action needed from our closed session. Ms. Cassandra Phillips, would you lead us in our invocation?
Sure, Madam President. Please stand and let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for all the blessings, especially for the opportunity to see another day. We ask that your will be done as we continue to write success stories one student at a time. Lord, we ask for guidance, courage, strength, and wisdom in our decision-making for those who have placed their confidence and trust in our leadership. We ask that you continue to keep our students safe during their summer break. We pray for comfort for those families who have recently lost loved ones. Dear Lord, please grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we say and do. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Cassandra. Ms. Janice Savage Martin, would you lead us in our pledges?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. It's now time for our superintendent's report. So, Dr. Smith?
All right. Thank you, Madam President, and good evening again, board members and those that are in attendance. I have just a few items for you, board, in terms of superintendent reports. Wanted to update you on the summer enrichment programs that we have going on across the district. The learning opportunities continue for our students, even though it is the summer break. And so we have a lot of great things going on, and I wanted to share just a few of them with you. One, we've got our Girls Start program that's going on, and we have our Engineering for Kids program that's going on. Both of these took place over a 2-week period. Specifically for girls, and so our girls were engaged in science, technology, engineering, and math as part of the STEM for girls and through this Girl Start program. We had over 35 of our young ladies participating. That is an increase over last year. And so some of the activities that our girls have been able to experience, they took the role of a city planner. They were designing skyscrapers, engineering roadways, had to come up with a solution to control pollution and explore various power solution sources. And so obviously was an awesome opportunity and experience for our students to be involved in over the summer. We also have a number of different programs going on simultaneously through June as well as into July at Duncanville High School. We have what we call the C3 camp. That included 5th through 8th grade students, had 33 of those students. The goal for that camp was for students to be able to participate in non-traditional courses, bringing an awareness to career options in architecture, welding, cosmetology, and audiovisual, and more. So it was a great opportunity for those students to be exposed in those career paths. We also had a gifted and talented creativity camp. And students were engaged in art activities as well as science and math. And then we had a Skills for Living camp, and that supports special education and 504 students and helping them to be prepared for their vocational skills. And so many of the students had an opportunity to present themselves to a potential employer so that they can show that they are ready and capable to gain employment. So very, very excited about that. Also, our summer bridge camps. We've got a lot of those going on throughout the district. We've got bridge programs at our Collegiate Academy. We've got bridge programs at all three of our middle schools where we have the STEAM, the Health Science Academy, and the Business Tech Academy. And so the summer class for the freshmen at the Collegiate Academy, they attended the bridge camp. And the bridge camp for all of these different programs, they basically prepare the students for the experiences that they're going to have once school starts. So obviously these programs have a very rigorous academic program, and so it's early exposure to give them the kind of experiences they're going to be having to be prepared for once the school year starts. And so also they're working on TSI preparation, the P-TECH program, that's a special designation for our students. It gives them opportunities to get certifications in the architectural design program. And then the middle school programs, as I mentioned, we have bridge programs at each one of, for each one of the academies that we specified at the middle schools. And so just outstanding learning, outstanding opportunities to get our students ready for those programs once the school starts. The last item that I had for you, board, is the activity buses. Of course, we want to thank our voters for approving the penny swap on last fall that allowed us the opportunity to purchase additional buses for the district. We had not, we were well off the recycle phase for our new buses, so we were in dire need, so we were able to do that. And then obviously we have lots of different state award-winning extracurricular activities throughout our district, and so now these 4 activity buses, some of you had a chance to probably maybe seen it in the parking lot, came in, had an opportunity maybe to go look inside. They're really nice, and so very excited for the students that are going to be able to participate in that. We're also in the process of developing, finalizing the procedures that we'll use for the different programs to secure the services of the buses. You may recall we had students that were involved in designing the wrap that you see here. One of the students, he graduated. He was a senior, and so he's graduated, moved on. But we're going to reach back out to him and show him the final product, so to speak. So we're really proud of the work that the students did there, and looking forward to seeing those buses on the road. We'll definitely be recognized wherever we go. So really proud of that. Those are the items that I have for you this evening for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Our next presenter will be Dina McFerrin, our Education Foundation Executive Director.
It's a little tall. Good evening. Thank you so much for serving. Welcome to all the new board members. It's my first time in front of y'all. I wanted to touch on 2 things that the foundation has just recently accomplished, the foundation and the Alumni Association. At the graduation season, I had the honor and privilege to present the George Sprayberry Award at the Pace High School graduation. Wow, what a moving ceremony. If you haven't had the opportunity to attend, I highly recommend it. It will restore your faith in humanity. I didn't do the ugly cry, but I came really close. And that particular event just drove home that my heart and my job are perfectly aligned now, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for that. Then the Alumni Association this past Saturday had our first sort of official event at Tommy Sheffield's house. We had 4 generations of Duncanville alumni there, ranging from Ann Hyman at 93 to class of 65 graduates all the way to class of 2003 graduates, 4 generations of Duncanville. It was a pretty cool event. We had about 50 people there, and we hope to get that on a roll and get bigger and better with the Alumni Association and a little more organized and pulled together. So it was a great event. And what we have coming up are some exciting things. Our we have determined our grant recipients for the year, and those grant award winners will be presented at faculty meetings at the beginning of the year, or maybe prior to the beginning of the year. We're working on scheduling with principals now. And then we'll celebrate those grant recipients at Convocation, where we will be participating, and we're super excited about that opportunity, and thank you for allowing us to do that. And then we have our annual 5K, the Heart of Duncanville, that's coming up in October, and we're headlong into preparations for that. It's going to be October 12th, which is a Saturday, as you might have guessed. And we're working on sponsorship development now and all of the preparations that go along with it, and we hope to see everybody there. And that is what I have for you this evening. Thanks for letting me come.
Thank you, Dina. Is former trustee Mr. Joe Veracruz our chairman for that?
He is the chairman for the event.
Okay.
Thank goodness. And thanks, Janet.
Thank you. It is now time to move into recognitions and commendations. Can we first have Ms. Kathleen Brown to introduce a special new person?
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Smith, Board of Trustees. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the new principal of Fair Meadows Elementary School, Mrs. Suhey Villarreal.
Ms. Villarreal.
Mrs. Villarreal, of course, will be serving as the principal at Fair Meadows Elementary School. She brings over 14 years of experience to her new role. She received her bachelor's degree from UT Dallas in 2004 and her master's from DBU in 2013. Ms. Villarreal has served as an elementary bilingual teacher, a bilingual literacy strategist, dual language coordinator, and most recently as an assistant principal at Ponder Elementary School in Mansfield ISD. We're excited for Ms. Villarreal to join the team and bring her passion and skill set to Duncanville ISD. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we would also like for Ms. Villarreal's family and friends that are here to support her to stand at this time.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, and welcome. Glad to have a new member, good team member. And Fair Meadows is a great school. That's where my boys went, so. Okay, would Tiara Richard continue with our recognitions?
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. So during the summer months when we don't have students here, our Made with Pride honor recognitions sort of go on hiatus, but that doesn't mean that we stop recognizing those who are doing great things in the district. And so I'd like to welcome up one of our business partners who works with many of our schools, but in particular Kennemer Middle School. I'd like to invite up the store manager from Walmart, Mr. Joel McKee. Mr. McKee, all right. So, Mr. McKee kindly left the store this evening to come spend a little time with us. I think that he probably may enjoy the break just a little bit. But Mr. McKee is the store manager here at the Walmart at Wheatland, which is right next to Acton and Kennemer. And during his time there, he's been at that location for 3 years, but we've seen just an increased presence in our schools. If you've paid any attention to any of our social media at any of those schools, you will see that regularly there'll be pictures of Mr. McKee or other people at the Walmart store posing with donations of school supplies, of water, of different things and different elements that our campuses need. And so they're constantly giving of themselves. Just this year alone, they presented $4,000 grants to both Kennemer and Acton, and also a $2,000 grant to the high school. So these are grants that they don't have to spend money in Walmart. They're able to use that money as they need at whatever facility. But anytime there's a need, if there's a dance, whenever it was Valentine's dance at Kennemer, they were like, what's your need? Well, we need nacho cheese and chips to make sure our kids have something to eat and to celebrate at the dance. We got that for you. And so they're constantly reaching out and giving of themselves and making sure they take care of our schools and our students. And when I asked Mr. Key, well, why do you guys do it? Why do you give so freely? He said, that's just us. That's what Walmart, that's what we do. He's been a member of the Walmart family for 17 years and really is dedicated to making sure that every supporting piece that they can provide, they are giving it to our schools. And so we wanted to thank you so much for your dedication and your commitment. And we're really proud of you and thank you for being a partner in Duncanville ISD, sir. Mr. McKee, can I have you take a photo right here? Thank you, sir. And as we continue through the summer, we'll have other businesses that we'll bring forward to make sure that we're giving an opportunity to continue these recognitions. We have a lot of amazing partners. When I reached out to the principals and said, who are some of the groups that are partnering with you? I received a very, very long list. So we'll make sure that we have the opportunity to continue to celebrate those groups that give so freely to the district as a whole. And so you'll see more of that in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. We will now move to a public hearing on the sole issue of the 2019-2020 proposed budget. We will first hear from Dr. Bigby. If you wish to address the board after the presentation by Dr. Bigby, please come to the podium. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes. Delegations of more than 5 persons must appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. Dr. Bigby?
Good evening again. Seemed like we've been here before. In front of you, you should have a book that looks like this. Before we start through the presentation, I want to quickly walk you through that. So as we start referencing some of those things, you can look at them in the book if you'd like. After the table of contents, there's an executive summary that compares percentage-wise last year's budget after the TRE with this year's budget. If you'll notice, when we get into the actual charts that you'll be looking at, it's comparing last year's before the TRE, because that's a budget you adopted, and then with what the actual numbers are for 1920. But the percentages in this executive summary compare it back to the TRE, so you can see where we moved from how much money we had into how much we have this year. The next page is recognizing you folks and administrators. The page number 2 is the notice that has to go in the paper 2 weeks in a row before the budget hearing to make it legal that we're having a hearing. Page 3 is probably the most important page in the book. It lists the general operating fund, the child nutrition, and the debt service funds, which are the 3 funds that you have to adopt legally. I know we were charged with bringing you a balanced budget, but if you look at the bottom, it's not. Everything's balanced except debt service. If you remember, we asked you to allow us to pay part of the debt service out of the fund balance of debt service rather than pulling it out of maintenance and operation. So you'll see that the revenue is a little over 16.5 million, or almost 17 million under debt service, and the expenditures are 18.8 million. So that's the difference that'll need to be paid out of the debt service fund balance, which still leaves you an extremely healthy fund balance in INS. Next year, we'll probably not be asking you to do that. If the values grow the way we think they are, you may not have to anyway. We may be able to pay the debt service out of it, but who knows how they're going to deal with that 2.5% cap. TA doesn't, and we don't either. So, page 4 shows the 18-19 general budget compared to the proposed 1921. You can see the differences between all the functions and then the revenue sources. We'll go into that a little more depth in the presentation. Page 5 shows the per ADA budget from 1819 to 1920. Page 6 is the Child Nutrition Fund that compares the 2 years. Page 7 is the same for debt service. And beginning on page 8 and all the way through almost the end of the book to the page 2.8, it gives you all of our debt. The first chart is what our total debt payment is each year, and then each separate chart after that shows which bond we're paying how much on at what time. We make 2 payments a year, in August and in February, and you can see those in the first page of that, how much we're paying. You can tie that back to our debt service budget for expenditures. And if you'll notice, it's actually the 3rd page in, 4th page in, 5th page in. It's marked 1-2. It's what we talked about a lot when we were talking about the TRE. It's the one that says outstanding United unlimited tax debt by principal and interest. You can see it starts at the year 2018-19 and goes through the year 2044-45. And if you'll notice, it doesn't escalate. We talked about our debt is flat and then drops, where most districts escalate. And I showed Dr. Smith one of our neighboring districts, we won't call names, but where ours did this, theirs does this. So they're betting on having their property values increase enough to pay that debt in the future. If ours never grew again, you could pay your debt. And that's, I don't know if y'all sleep better at night, but I do, knowing that. So, page mark number 28, it's 4 from the back. The numbering is a little odd on this. You'll find the initial value that we got from the Dallas Central Appraisal District. That's going to change. We'll see 2 changes to that before we finally get the actual certified values, which come on July 25th. We have to operate, and so will everyone now, off of preliminary values, since we typically have, because our fiscal year begins in July. So we had to guesstimate those. So we've taken that and historically looked at what it was then versus what it turns out, and typically lose about 3% between the initial announcement from the appraisal district until we get the certified values. That's people bringing their taxes to them, and some of those are reduced and things change. So we budgeted off of that 3.3% less than what they actually told us to start with. Page 29 to 31 are the template that we used, and this is the template in its primal stage, because Omar Garcia is the one that puts it together, and he had like a week after the legislation passed to put this together, and it's pretty accurate for that. TA just now came out with one that's not near that accurate, so we're appreciative of having someone else that does that. And page 32 shows the breakdown of ADA and special populations over the years. So wanted to just quickly go over with you so that, when you're reading at home and really in depth and enjoying the budget book, you'll understand what those are. I'm sure that's moving on. I wanted to quickly review the salary plan that you approved earlier in the month. It increases the beginning teacher pay from $51,000 to $53,000. It increases the teachers with 1 to 5 years of experience by $2,200. Increases teachers with 6+ years experience, librarians, counselors, and nurses by $2,300. Increases all other employees by 3% of the midpoint, plus adjustments that TASB has recommended, and those have been presented to you in the past. Also, we've asked you to add $11 a month for each employee taking medical insurance. That pays the low end of a single employee's insurance. And the total salary increases together about $3.3 million. But that's what you approved 2 weeks ago, and that's what's in the budget. Projected tax rate, and this one's pretty easy because the legislature said this is going to be your tax rate. so we didn't have to figure just a whole lot out of it. They compressed the M&O tax rate. We went from $1.17 down to $1.684, or a 10.16 cent drop. The INS rates remained the same at 35 cents. So the total tax rate for this year that we'll ask you to approve in August is 1.4184, or 6.9% less than what it was last year. This is on page 3, if you want to follow it there, if you can't see this very well. It just breaks down the revenue for the 3 funds that you have to approve. You can see we're asking you to approve a $122,760,000 budget for general operating. Child nutrition's about $7.4 million, and the debt service revenue is $16.8. Once again, that's $2 million less than what we're asking for expenditures. You can see that, well, I'll show you on this. This breaks down the general fund revenue, which is the big one, to show you what you're paying as a taxpayer and what the state's picked up. The numbers in black are this year, or for 1920, and ones in red are 1819. You can see that this year, 42.5% of our funds are going to come from local, and last year, 43.9%. So the state did tip it just a little bit. It wasn't anywhere near what everyone was hoping for, but they did tip it. Next year, they're contributing 55.6. They contributed 54.3 last year, and you can see the federal that's in the general operating fund varied just a little bit more this year. So that's how it breaks down, not much different than what it was last year. Expenditures, you can see how those fall into the different functions. And by law, you have to adopt the budget at the function level, so we have to present it to you in the functions. They're all there. They've changed considerably, some of them mostly because of the salary increase and added personnel that we had from last year. But you can see the functions they fall into. Food service only deals with a few of those, and debt service only deals with one function, function 71. And you can see at the bottom, the totals for each one of them, and you can see how the fund balance should shake out at the end of next year. We'd still have about 46.6% fund balance in general operating, which is very healthy. 9% in child nutrition. We've actually spent that down since I've been here to buy some equipment. And you can see that it was still, even after taking the $2 million off to pay the INS out of fund balance, we'll still have about a 50% fund balance in debt service, which those are all very healthy. You can see the expenditures, everything that's instruction related, 74.9% of our budget's tied to instruction related services. Support services, you can see 13.9% of the budget is there. 7% is in campus administration, 4.2% in general administration. You can see those numbers, administrative numbers for campus stayed just about the same, and it went slightly down in the general administration or the central office administration. When you compare that back to budget per ADA, you can see the amount of increase. We went, just for an example, in instruction, we went from 5,001 per ADA to 5847. So you can see it was a substantial increase. Our total increase was more of in the $500 range, but you can see the bulk of it went into instruction, and some of the others even went down some. And that's the overview of the budget. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions or try.
Any questions for Dr. Bigby? And that includes audience too.
Yeah, just.
Seeing none,
Thank you.
this will close our public hearing. Thank you, Dr. Bigby and Dr. Smith and your staff. I know you spent many, many hours and many, many months. We now move to our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Janice. Janice made the motion and Renee seconded. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. We will now move to the action agenda. The first action item is consider approval of the 2019-2020 budget. Dr. Bigby, do you need to? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the 2019-2020 budget?
I make a motion that we approve the 2019-2020 budget as presented by Dr. Bigby.
Thank you, Janice. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Renee. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. We will now move to action item B, to consider approval of the purchase of Microsoft services. Shante Cowan, please.
All right. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. Again, I'm Shante Cowan, Chief Technology Officer. And so my purpose for this evening, for presenting to you all, is to request approval for the renewal of our district's licensing agreement for our Microsoft products, as well as the services. So as a part of our standard policy, approval for this product is required by the board before the transaction can actually take place, because the total yearly cost is over $50,000. So with that being said, our current Microsoft solution is utilized all across the district by our staff and our students. And it runs on our servers, which provides us with the ability to be connected to our wide area network. The software also offers a variety of productivity tools that we use here in the district. They're resources for our staff and students again, and we use them daily. We use them for our database, our email, and several other types of activities. The subscription that we have, it lasts for 1 year, and is based on our student and our staff counts. It's also, it offers us the ability to be creative here in our district, to collaborate and communicate, to promote continuous improvement. So our agreement includes, but it's actually not limited to, the following types of products and services. First, our desktop licenses. Examples of that might be like our PowerPoint that you see here in front of us. It might be word processing, like our Word software, database software, as well as spreadsheets like Excel. So it's the typical types of products that we use every day. It also includes Microsoft Exchange. Exchange is what we use for our email systems and our calendar invites and things of that nature. We also have Office 365 in our district, and that is cloud-based storage as well as productivity tools. So we're really trying to make sure that we're moving in the direction of the cloud for safety and security reasons. We also have SQL, which is our SQL servers. That's a platform that we use to store those databases, as well as Microsoft Active Directory, and that would be what we use to authenticate. So when a user enters their username and password, that's what we use to make sure that we're providing them with those credentials. And then lastly, our servers and our data center, we operate on a Microsoft Office, our Microsoft type of operating system. So at this time, the recommendation is for the approval for the renewal of that Microsoft contract. And I would love to entertain any questions about that at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Cowan? Jackie?
Sorry about that. Mrs. Cowan, thank you very much.
Yes.
I guess, can you tell us why this particular company was selected?
Yes, ma'am. So in our district, we have a hybrid of types of products. Microsoft is predominantly one that we use, as well as our Google services. With our district, many of our staff members, we utilize the Microsoft product, and that's common throughout all the different districts as well as corporations because of the type of productivity tools that they have, like our Excel and PowerPoint and things of that nature, as well as really helping us in our data center. So many of our servers, we use that type of platform.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to, why was the vendor
Oh.
selected?
I'm sorry, I thought you meant the product. They actually use, we go through DIR with them. They provide discounts for us as a district, and so that allows us to be able to get a more competitive rate.
Okay, I'm familiar with DIR.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms. Cowan? Thank you, Ms. Cowan.
All right, thank you all.
Do I have a motion in regards to the purchase of Microsoft services?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie.
Second.
Thank you, Cassandra. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passed 7-0. Okay, we will now move to action item C to consider naming of the softball field after Mike Kreitzberg. Ms. Melissa Cates.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Smith. We have before you tonight a motion to name the softball fields after Mr. Mike Kreitzberg. Mr. Kreitzberg served in the district for 42 years, his entire educational career. He started out as a teacher and a coach at Byrd Middle School, and then he served as the principal at Duncanville High School for 22 years. In 2012, he moved to administration, and he retired in 2018 as the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. So we have before you a motion where the board has the authority under board policy to name facilities after certain individuals in the district. And so we recommend moving to name the softball fields after Mr. Mike Kreitzberg.
Any questions for Ms. Cates? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Janice.
Second.
Thank you, Cassandra. Are there any discussion, comments, questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? None. Motion passes 7-0. We will now move to action item D to consider approval of the request for proposed RFP for custodial supplies. This will be Ms. Andrea Fields.
And good evening, Madam President, to the board members, Dr. Smith, and waiting audience. It is my pleasure this evening to stand before you and ask for your approval for the RFP, or the request for proposal, for our custodial chemical supplies and paper products. And of course, this is in line with our policy, CH Legal and Local, because of the cumulative time that we will need these goods and services. It will be over $50,000. And so, as you can imagine, with all of our facilities, we spend quite a bit of money with using these supplies, keeping our facilities and our buildings clean. And so with that, you have before you the recommendation of the administration. And you may notice that on your bid tab, there are several vendors who submitted bids for this proposal. I think as I worked with Ms. Corson, who is also in the audience this evening, we calculated there were approximately 13 different vendors who submitted bids. There were some items, as you've noticed, that some companies did not bid on those items. And so tonight, what we're asking you to approve is the ones that are highlighted. I think you have those there in front of you. There are various things all the way from trash can liners to the rags that we use to clean the various areas in the school, vacuum cleaner bags, all kinds of cleaners, on and on and on. And so with that, we're asking you that all of the vendors or local DFW vendors, or they have an office or a site here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You may also be interested in what it says about the unit price. So I want to kind of clarify that for you, because you may see something that says unit, case. It depended on the individual vendor. Sometimes, like for instance, I think I looked at the vacuum cleaner bags. That's on, I think for me, it's page 3 at the top from one of our vendors. And they have the unit price, it says 10. So there are 10 bags in that particular unit. If it says case, there may be, depends on, I think I looked at one for paper towels, the big rolls we use to dispense the paper towels, there may have only been 8 in there. So that's the difference. It depends on the vendor, whether they would package it in a box, a case, it may be an individual thing. So you may see that number beside, I want to clarify, it may say 5, it may say 12, it may say 100, it depends on what it was. So tonight, we're asking for your approval for our custodial supplies. Ms. Paterka's out in the audience as well, and he and his staff were a part of looking at all the bids that were submitted along with our purchasing department. And so we're bringing this recommendation. There are various vendors that we receive supplies from based on the unit, our experience with those, the quality of the product, how responsive the vendor is to getting the product to us. So we just can't really stick with one company. We use various companies to make sure that we get the best price. Sometimes it's not always the highest, but it's most of the time it's the best for what we need in our district. I'll ask her any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Mrs. Fields? Jackie?
Mrs. Fields,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to applaud the district for seeking multiple bids for the items.
Yes,
I do
ma'am.
have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the bottom of page 91,
Oh.
for the microfiber cloth, there's a highlighted price of $8.16.
I don't have my,
Oh, you
I don't have an actual book, so
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
so I can't really tell what, if I could look at it, perhaps, thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Who submitted that bid? Okay. The reason why I'm asking, yeah, it's cut off. That's what I was just wanting to clarify. Because under competitive choice, the first column is unit price, and then you have the case price and units per case, and then you start over with the unit price. So I wasn't sure which company submitted the winning price for the microfiber. Yes. Yeah.
Your first page.
And I can't see. Okay, because I have the longer paper, so that probably was to go to the other side, but we will clarify that and get that corrected for you. I apologize for that, it's just the clarity. What I have on my page is a little longer, your book perhaps is smaller, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I apologize. Any other questions?
Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion in regards to the request for proposal for custodial supplies?
So moved.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Second.
Janice? Thank you, Janice. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
No, there's a correction.
Oh, there's a correction, I'm so sorry. That's right, Jackie. 6-1. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Janice. Okay, we will now move to action item E, to consider approval of the selection of construction delivery method for various projects in the district. Andrea Fields, you're up to bat once more.
Tonight, we're also bringing before you another part of my job responsibilities is the selection of the construction delivery method for various construction projects within the district. As the board is aware, we're working on several upcoming construction projects with your approval, with another one tonight around the district, including the possibility of the repurposing of former Acton to the Teaching and Learning Center, repurposing, of course, the former administration building on Main Street to the Duncanville ISD Police Department, and then additional paving of and resurfacing for parking for our athletic facilities, particularly on Kathy Self Morgan Way. And so earlier this year, the board approved Huckabee Architects for the architects for these projects and to prepare the construction documents for them. And so tonight, we're going to be asking you to approve the type of method that we will use in regard to the construction. And so we have with us tonight Mr. Andre Brackens of Huckabee, who's going to come and give you a little bit more detail about the method that we're recommending, and then he can also answer any questions you may have about other options.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. I want to give you just a brief synopsis, if I can, regarding the delivery method. It's called CMAR, that's the acronym for it. It's Construction Manager at Risk, and it was utilized for the 2014 bond program projects as well, which were delivered successfully and also under budget. And when you look at delivery methods, you also have the option of what's called CSP, which is competitive sealed proposal, or if you will, it's like a hard bid. But for the projects and the scope that Ms. Fields just identified for the several projects throughout the district, the construction manager at risk delivery method is probably most advantageous for the district to utilize. And there's several reasons for that. You basically have a one point of contact or one-stop shopping, if you will, with a construction manager at risk, who is both the general contractor and is responsible for the schedule, the scope, and the budget. The other advantage is that we get the opportunity to work with them as a project team. As your architect, we bring them in during the design process so that they can offer ideas on value engineering, controlling cost, and that goes through the design process and is very advantageous. The other advantage is that since these projects are renovation projects, a construction manager at risk is able to address a lot of the surprises or the unknowns that come up during this process. And they basically give you what's called a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price for the project, and it is their responsibility to bring it in at that price. It is guaranteed, as opposed to a competitive sealed proposal. Sometimes there are a lot of unknowns, and you've heard the terms that we don't like to use as architects, but change orders often result in that delivery method as well. So again, the construction manager at risk will also, because it's one-stop shopping, it will take a lot of the time and burden off of your operations and facilities staff from that standpoint in terms of managing and overseeing the actual construction of the project. Lastly, this is right now, a very saturated construction market, and because of that, subcontractors are in demand, and with the construction manager at risk delivery method, they're able to utilize subs or what we call buy out a project or self-perform work because the market is so saturated. It makes sense in terms of the type of projects that we're looking at. And I think the last advantage to note is that you get an economy of scale because we're able to bundle all of the projects together rather than having individual projects and having repetitive overhead and different things that would come in a competitively sealed project. So that's basically an overall synopsis, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarifications that you might have on that delivery method.
Any questions? Thank you.
You're
That was
welcome.
easy, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
I make a motion that we approve the construction manager at risk delivery method in a one-step process for construction of 3 facilities, the Teaching and Learning Center, the Duncanville ISD Police Department, and the parking lot on Kathy Self Morgan Way.
Thank you, Janice. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jackie. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments or discussion? Jackie?
When do we plan to bring the recommendation for this selection?
So the recommendation will be at next month's board meeting.
Thank you.
Any further questions, discussions, comments? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passed 7-0. We will now move to the information and discussion agenda items. The first item will be the schematic designs and cost estimates for Teaching and Learning Center and parking lot on Kathy Self Morgan Way. Ms. Fields, are you getting tired?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
All this is very exciting. And this is an information item for you tonight. Again, I'm going to have the Huckabee team come this time. We have a duo. I'm not sure who's coming first. And they're going to present to you the schematic design and cost estimates for your information tonight. And we'll possibly bring it back to you next month for your consideration for approval. We have Mr. Andre Bragness again and Mr. Luke Powell.
Thank you again, Ms. Fields. And you see Luke is basically putting up a presentation board of materials that were selected throughout the process, and that is specifically for the Duncanville ISD Police Department, and you'll get some idea of the materials that were used. So once again, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith, we are thankful to be able to have this informational presentation tonight of a couple of projects, and specifically the Old Acton repurpose to the Teaching and Learning Center. And you do have a presentation before you, but I do have hard copies available that are a little larger scale, so that you can actually take a closer look and flip through. And I definitely want to acknowledge and thank Ms. Fields and her operations team for collaborating and assisting us, and also obviously Ms. Cates as well, who was very helpful as we began to put together information through this. And so through an initial vision and understanding of what these projects were to entail, we again are appreciative of Dr. Smith and the time that he gave us so that we could understand and walk through the project. So you're receiving a hard copy, and I'll walk through, kind of give you a 30,000-foot level overview of the projects, and then my colleague, Luke, will take you through some of the specifics. And I want to encourage you, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interject at that time and be happy to address them. So if we go to page 1, again, we give a narrative of the Teaching and Learning Center and what it is composed of. That's on the left side that sort of gives a narrative of everything that's included in the scope of the project. There's obviously space for district administrative staff, but there are teaching and learning spaces that are being created, both in terms of large conference rooms and what we call huddle spaces or breakout spaces. I don't know if you've ever been to the Region 10 Educational Center, but there are several of the spaces that are very similar to that type of format in terms of teaching and learning. So that was the overall vision, if you will. And then there was also some work that's required on the building in terms of parking improvements, and then also some exterior work that's required, what we call RTUs, which is your HVAC system and air conditioning systems that needed to be upgraded and repaired. And then also the staff is already taking care of, and I know with the age of some of these buildings, many of you have questions about any asbestos remediation. Those things have been taken care of by the operations and facility staff. And so we're able to basically now go in and begin to design and begin to look at utilization of the space. So if we go to the next page, I'm going to defer to my colleague Luke, and he'll begin to, again, walk you through the specifics of the project.
Good evening. It was a pleasure being here, Madam President, Dr. Smith, Board of Trustees. Just to quickly run you through the site plan and the exterior. What you're seeing up here in the light gray is the existing parking areas that we will repave, restripe, and then we are looking at doing this in 2 phases, the project, just to get a better value for the first phase. So the portion of the darker gray parking that you see down on the left side would be in phase 1, and that is directly adjacent to what would be the main entry into the Teaching and Learning Center. And then with the dash line around it to the right would be phase 2 parking. This total parking would give us 211 spaces, would be at 153 after phase 1. And then we do still have additional space to the plan north on the right side there, that if we need to extend any additional parking as we continue our studies, we can do that. All right, in the floor plan, what we really wanted to do was to, we've got 2 functions in this space. We've got the Teaching and Learning Center, and then we have some administration offices as well. Although they will function together, we wanted to keep them separate. So what you're seeing here in the yellow is really the Teaching and Learning Center. That's our large meeting rooms, huddle spaces, small conference rooms, all of the storage that goes along with that. And then what I'm calling the orange color up in the top portion of the plan is the administration offices. We've got the offices, workstations, support areas, and the functions that go along with that. To really energize this space, though, we wanted to have a lot of open collaboration space, huddle spaces, like Mr. Brackens had mentioned. And in these spaces, as you're in a room like this, and you're learning all day long, when you come out of this, everybody's got something different to do, whether it's take a personal phone call or something that's not personal, so they need a space to go. Or you'll get people who come in little groups of 4. They'll need to either go someplace that can be public or go someplace that can be private. So we really took these huddle spaces. We got things that will accommodate anything from 1 to 2 people to 6 to 8 people, and there's multiple places to go. So as you're in here, you can have multiple meetings and things going around. So what looks to be in the light gray in circulation, a lot of circulation space, there's a lot of spaces that are really going to liven the place up. Other spaces that you see here in the green is we got a cafe, which is, again, multi-function. It can be used for meetings, lunch meetings, anything else. There's no reason why that can't be used as a conferencing space as well. And then, as I said, these administration and teaching and learning space work together. So we have a large communal break room. Again, it could be used for multitudes of purposes. This is really a multi-function space all around. Just the dark gray is all of our really back-of-house support spaces, mechanical, electrical, technology room, restrooms, et cetera. Just to quickly go back, you will notice numbers throughout this plan, and these numbers do correspond with the images here. So I'll quickly run through here, starting in the bottom left. Number one is really, it's the large training rooms. And that is an image, Mr. Brackenson mentioned Region 10, that a few of these are from Region 10, you may notice if you've been there. Two, again, you can see that is the cafe space, but you can also see how that can be used as in multiple different levels, in different capacities. Number three is the reception. Now, keep in mind, a precedent image is a look and feel. It doesn't mean these are the colors. It doesn't mean this is the furniture. It's really just kind of an idea of how the space is going to be used. Number four, again, is one of those really informal, more public breakout spaces. Number five is really, it's kind of a display feature wall. It's more, again, alive in that corridor, so I'm not just walking down a corridor and walking from one space to another. Six is another communal space. Seven is a writable surface. And if we go back to this plan, you see over in the color legend, when you get to the bottom, we've got a blue line, a red line, and a green line. And these correspond to lines that are on the plan. So the blue are writable surfaces. So you can really just have breakout sessions and really idea sessions and work through items. And then we've got presentation walls. And these presentation walls can be screens, as we see here with the large screens. But a presentation wall can also be a place where teachers or staff can display ideas and things like that, just to share with everybody else. So we'll see some of these presentation walls kind of out in the open. And then the green is the display wall. And actually the display wall, we did break that out. That is more of where the teachers would present ideas and share thoughts. I mean, one idea is that, everybody here has multiple talents. I mean, you may have teachers that are photographers and you give them an opportunity a month, let's open up and share what we do beyond outside of teaching and become a family and share ideas. So, I mean, that's what some of these green display walls could be. Number 8 is one of these huddle spaces. This is more 6-person private huddle space. But you see the glass and how you can look through that huddle space, which is a great feeling when you come over here and you really look at what is a window, an exterior window, so we can get light into this space. So if we, even though we've got large conference rooms up against the windows, the opposite side of that window, we want to have glass as well, so that, we can't really filter the light through, but you're going to get glimpses of the outside, which is going to help in that look and feel and that energy. 9, again, open collaboration spaces. I mean, a lot of these are kind of, same idea, same thoughts. Number 10 is really in the break room, where your typical booth at a restaurant, but also, I mean, you can see somebody's here working, so the multifunction. Number 11, again, is a break room idea where we got a sunken area, and the break room is actually sunk about a foot. So it helps us step down and give multiple tiers to that break room. And then at 12 is just open office space to support the admin area. Again, we spoke about phasing this, and it's more about one is for the affordability in phases, so that the district's not incurring all the cost all at once for a space like this. We broke it down so that one, we could try and get training space as well as some of the admin space at once. And we also want to keep an efficiency to where we're not trying to move administration over twice and move them around. So, we'll build a portion of the time and kind of what we can, which is where, as you just approved, the construction manager will really help us in figuring out what we can do and what within the budget at this time. So what you're seeing here, all of the highlighted areas, are what we're proposing currently as phase 1. This will include, key support spaces, restroom, mechanical, electrical, technology space. Everything that's grayed out is what we're currently proposing as being phase 2. Part of the exterior refresh is what you see with the highlighted red is an existing canopy. We really want to do a refresh into that entry, promote what is the main entry of this building. And what you see over number 13 over here, the image on the right, is again a precedent image. It's a look and feel, an idea. We're going to continue to develop this as we get further in design and really see what is it that's going to fit and promote this building, this entry. Just what we're looking at here on page 7 is the program and the opinion of probable cost. As far as the space program, just not going to run through the whole entire program, but what you're seeing here is you have the list of what the space is. In the second column, quantity, number of rooms, and then what you're seeing is proposed area and square footage is what was proposed in the program itself. Actual area of square footage is what we are providing currently in the plan. This is kind of an ever-evolving piece, you know, especially when you get into those circulation spaces. You'll see some of them look a little high, but again, some of those circulation spaces are really usable spaces. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brackens to talk about cost.
Thank you, Luke. And again, on that program of spaces, it gives you some idea of all the spaces that have been planned for and prepared for, and it gives you some rough square footage. Now, again, that's a plus or minus, but really the bottom line is the overall building is approximately just north of 40,000 square feet. So again, there is some give and take there as we decide which phases would be in phase 1. And which phases are necessary to be open or office area or what we call landing spaces. So there is a little latitude there. So that it's really not, it's right now it's fluid, and as we continue to develop it and finalize it in terms of what goes in phase 1 and phase 2, that number will be solidified. To the right, you have what we call our OPC, or opinion of probable cost. And these are estimates, and we have it broken down in terms of a description of the work in the first vertical column, phase 1 cost, phase 2 cost, and what we call it phase 3, but that's basically your total estimated cost. And it gives you some idea at this level, this conceptual level of estimating of the items that are included. For example, the site work, depending on the amount of acreage, you have the new parking area and site lighting, ADA accessibility, and landscape work coming in at $825,000 for phase 1. If we continue, the exterior renovation is your entry refresh. That's kind of your curb appeal and basically clarifying what your new main entry is. Again, exterior lighting, moisture mitigation. That's just making sure that your walls basically are waterproof and you don't have any migration of moisture through your exterior walls. We talked about the preventative roofing and maintenance. You currently have a roof warranty. We think it's cost effective to maintain that existing roof warranty from that standpoint and get the full value of what's already there and some of the work that's been done already. RTU replacement, again, that's your HVAC. On the interior, we're looking at 42,000 square feet overall. And you see that we have fire suppression as well. We will need to add fire sprinklers to the building and to the spaces. And obviously technology and audio-visual. And that gives you a construction total of about $3.8 million in the first phase with a contingency of $200,000. So a first phase estimated project total of $4 million. Second phase project estimated total of about 5 or 4.9. And then for a total of about 8.9. For the entire facility. Okay. In terms of schedule, which is page 8, this schedule is specifically for the Acton Refresh Phase 1 only. And so it gives you, we call it a Gantt chart, but you can get some idea of what it takes for schematic design and approval, design development, all the way through construction documents, bid and award, you would call it procurement, and the GMP approval, and the construction itself has this being completed in December of 20. So it's about 10 months of construction time for the facility at Acton. And the other facilities, if we are again able to bundle them under the construction manager at risk, they also have schedules, but we're looking at running some of those items concurrently with those. And I know you haven't seen the parking lot yet, but the parking lot will kind of run concurrently with this work as well to again, get the economy of scale. Since you have the construction manager, general contractor on site, able to do all of these projects, they can manage them at the same time and bring them in at a similar time. The police, the district police office would probably be finished sometime late spring, early summer of 20 from that standpoint. And we may even get the parking lot done adjacent to the stadium next to Kathy Self-Morgan Way. But we expect that the football team's going to be playing right through the season. So we would look at starting that work after the football season is completed. So I'm going to turn it back over to Luke. We have 2 more items that we'd like to show you in your packet, and we'll let Luke give us some details on those items.
Just to give you a quick glimpse of the parking lot. Again, this is planned south of Kathy Self-Morgan Way, directly across from the football stadium. And what we're looking at here is currently it is a partially paved, mostly gravel parking lot. We are not increasing the size of the parking lot. We are not quite sure, we don't really have a number of what the existing parking number of spaces is, but once we pave and stripe it, we are going to pick up an efficiency. So we will pick up spaces from what's currently there. We've all parked in the gravel parking lots before where, people park kind of willy-nilly wherever they want, and so we will pick up some spaces. So currently what we're showing here is 243 parking spaces, 12 of which are accessible parking spaces. One item to mention, though, is we do have a meeting later this week with the city of Duncanville to review this plan, and pending any comments that they have from the city, we may lose a couple of parking spaces or maintain in this fashion. But if we lose any, it wouldn't be much more than 5 to 10, depending on what they're really going to require us to do. The other item we want to show is we've all previously seen the interior of the police station. We just wanted to kind of show you the exterior, similar to what you saw for Old Acton, which is just kind of a couple of images. We wanted to show you what we were looking at here. So what you're looking at is, this is a view from looking from the south towards the building. So we've got, this is the south side, the prominent south side, which is the main entry from the secured parking lot into the police station. This is where all the officers' main entrance would be into the space. So because it's south facing, we did provide a new canopy entry there. One, to keep entry and weather, block the weather, but it's also going to help with the sun from that side. Without the canopy, this space would be very hot on the inside, and there's not many windows into the space currently. As you look farther down, the next entrance that you see down towards the left side, that's the main public entry into the police station. You can see that canopy is a little bit larger, trying to pronounce what is the police entry and what is the training room entry. So the training room is the far side that you barely see, but it's a little small canopy over that space. The other part you're seeing is we are proposing to paint the brick, the gray color, which is also on the board over here, and then pronounced with the Duncanville ISD police station between the two entries of what the police station is. And then the gate that you see, which is kind of really faded out in this picture, but it's the 6-foot security gate, and this would be the main drive into the secured parking for the police officers, keeping them off of entering from Main Street. So they'll enter through the existing parking lot, and then when they exit, would exit back out onto Main Street.
Madam President, may I ask
Sure, I have a
question just for
question
the
too.
clarity
Sure,
for the
sure.
board? So Luke, just for clarity for the board, the cost estimate that you have, the opinion of probable cost, can you pull that up? Just take a look at that. So the 8.9, that's the total cost. Just want to have some clarity for the board.
That is a total. There is no phase 3 currently being proposed. That is a mistake on our, that should say total, not phase 3. So the 8.9, yes, is phase 1 and phase 2 together.
Okay, and then one other point. is that inclusive of the parking lot or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, the site work at the top with the total of the 1.65 million is all of the exterior parking, landscaping, and everything that would go with that, yes.
okay, thank you for clearing that up for us.
I had a question too. You mentioned, or it shows 2 phases, but the employees won't move in after phase 1?
No, the employees would move in into the one section that is phase 1. They can move in right away.
What about noise, distractions while they're working?
We would most likely be putting up a temporary partition, a temp wall, to separate construction side from the administration side. But at that point, during high-level noises of what they're doing, if they're shooting track or most of the demo in that phase 1 gray area will be done, it really needs to be done in phase 1. But if they're getting into, like I said, shooting track into the ground or saw cutting a floor or something, that will need to be done after hours, so not to disturb the function of the space during phase 1.
So phase 1 is functioning.
Phase 1 would be functioning during construction, yes. But there's a lot of work that you can do, during office hours. I mean, you could be taping and mudding, gypboard that's not very noisy. They'll hang gyp after hours because when they get their guns out there, I mean, it's going to be disturbing, yes.
So back to the page you were on, the picture of the fence, that will be on Main Street at the front of the building, the tall fence?
Yes, that is, if you can imagine now where the trees are shown in this image, those are 2 really large trees currently that will have to come down to get the grading. But that south parking lot will be increased in size and fenced off. So that gate will go up to from the corner of the building, it's extending out towards Main Street.
So there won't be a drive-through that parents can go to Maryfield?
We extended the drive farther down, which helps bring traffic off of Main Street for stacking off drive, but it was extended down to the Main Street. So this parking, where currently the parents pull through the parking lot, it is completely separate now. This is truly a secure parking lot.
Very good.
Thank you. Are there any more questions, comments? Jackie?
So you all have met with Dallas for a pre-development meeting, or?
For Old Acton?
Yes.
Not with Old Acton. We still have to get that one set up with them, yes.
Okay, and then what is the occupancy level of the building as proposed?
As proposed, we're still working out exactly what that occupancy, I don't have the numbers. Again, every time we move a space slightly, it changes what that occupancy is. But we are, because of the function of the space, and I'm still teaching, we're still considered an educational space. So to where an assembly space, a training space is going to have a higher occupancy, this will not.
Okay, can we go to the chart that has the square footage? Where there's proposed and actual. Could you explain, I guess, the actual, exactly, what is that?
Actual is the square footage that are on the plan currently.
Okay, so that's the current actual square footage.
Right, so the first line item is Chief Academic Officer, and it's got an actual square footage of, my eyesight's bad, I think it says 281.
Okay, so I guess as a result of these improvements, the total square footage will be revised to 34,835?
No, if you look at the packet that's in front of you, we have revised that to reflect. So in your packet, it's got the building square footage. Unfortunately, there was a mathematical error, but we are just north of the 40,000 square foot. So the numbers do equal out in your packet.
Now, that's better. I was wondering about that. Okay, well, thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments, discussion? Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the A through F Accountability System Review and 2019 preliminary STAR results, and the presenter is Stephanie Bonneau.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. I'm here this evening to speak to you all about our STAR scores based on our 2018-2019 testing season. Along with that, I'm going to give you some of our preliminary predictions, if you will, on where we're going to fall with our A through F accountability based on the information that we have and TEA's formulas for calculating those accountability ratings. So I'm going to start with a summary for the district. We're rated in 4 categories: student achievement, student growth, relative performance, and closing gaps. I'll explain those in more detail here in a couple of slides. So what you have on the screen here is our 2018 actual score, and then what we project that where we're going to perform in the 2019 accountability rating. So you can see that we had a 10-point increase to a 79 in student achievement, a 6-point increase in student growth to a 76. In relative performance, we increased by 12% to an 87. And closing gaps, we increased by 9% to a 76. And that brings our overall score for the district to what we project to be an 84, which would put our district at a B. So, yeah, it's cause for celebration. Which is up 11% from last year. I also wanted to go ahead and touch on our 3 campuses that last year were rated at improvement required, or IR. In order to be rated at an IR campus, you have to score at a 59 or lower. And those 3 campuses last year were Acton Elementary, Alexander Elementary, and Hastings. Acton was a 55. This year, we project them to be at a 76, which will put them at a C. That's a 21% increase in 1 year, which is amazing on the part of the campus. Alexander Elementary was a 57 in 2018. They've moved up to a 67, which is on the high end of the D scale. It's a D. That's an improvement of 10%. That's amazing. That's a good job. And then Hastings improved 17% in 1 year from a 52 to a 69, which puts them at a D as well. So all 3 of our current IR campuses are projected to come well out of IR. They needed to be at a 59 or higher, and we're well above that on all 3 campuses. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's very encouraging to see, these improvements. Job well done.
Yes,
to
ma'am.
the staff and everyone.
Several of them are here, so if you're at one of these 3 campuses, do you
Yeah,
wanna-
I mean, it's great. This is kind of,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So it says projected
Yes, ma'am.
2019.
Yes, ma'am.
And so are these like the 76 and 67, 69, are these the final rating?
So that's a very good question. The state doesn't publish their calculations until August 15th.
Okay.
But we have a combination of ways that we can calculate, and then we kind of cross-measure and make sure that we're matching. So what you have are projections. We did the same process last year. We were within a couple of percentage points one way or the other. So these should be handled as such, a couple of percentage points one way or the other. But they should be accurate based on the information we have.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I want to take a few minutes to remind everyone of the process for the A through F accountability. It's been a while since we've covered it, and so it's a nice little review. So for elementary, intermediate, and middle school campuses, almost all of their markers are based on STAR scores. With the state measures student success, student growth, relative performance, and closing gaps. All of those are STAR measures. Closing gaps also has a TELPAS measure, which is a test that our English learners take to measure their English proficiency. For the high school campus and for the district, it's all of those things and STAR with TELPAS. In addition, there's college, career, and military readiness, which we refer to as CCMR, and graduation rate. That CCMR measure and graduation rate go into student success, and they also show up in closing gaps. We'll look at that here in just a second. So what does student achievement mean? The state measures scores tests on 3 levels. A student can score at approaches grade level, which means the state says you passed your test, but you're not at grade level, you're not performing fully at grade level yet. They can be meets grade level, which means they passed and they're at grade level, or they can be master's grade level, which means they're above grade level. So in order to figure out for elementary through middle schools what their student achievement score is going to be, the state takes the average number of tests that scored at approaches, the average number at meets, and the average at masters, and then they take those 3 and average them together. So I have a chart there so you can see kind of how it fits. If you were a campus that was 80% approaches, 56% meets, and 40% masters, you average those 3 numbers together. That gives you a 59. TEA does their formula, magic math, and they come up with an 89. And that would be what you actually scored in that domain, in 89. Now, it's different for the district and for the high school because they have CCMR and they have graduation rate. So when we look at this slide, it's that same measure, student achievement, but this shows how it measures for the district and for the high school. And these are this year's numbers. So you can see that student achievement for the district was at a 69. That's weighted at 40% of that measure. Our CCMR was at 90%, and that is weighted at 40%. And our graduation rate was 75, and that's weighted at 20%. So when they do the math for that, that gives us a 79 in that. That's how we come up with our 79. For DHS, you use the same process. Their student achievement was a 70, CCMR was a 91, graduation rate was an 85, and that gave them an 81 for student achievement. So that helps you to show how those scores are generated. A big part of our increase this year was due to our CCMR. That is it's called a lagging indicator. So it's basically based on our 2018 graduates. So everything runs for CCMR and for graduation rate, those 2 pieces, everything runs 1 year behind. So a lot of work was done at the high school, a lot of work was done behind the scenes to make sure we reported everything accurately, done by the CTE department, done by advanced academics, done by counseling to make sure we were finding out who our kids were that had military intent, that kind of thing, to get our reporting as accurate as we could get it. Domain 2 is district and campus growth. So it has 2 parts. The first part is student growth. Basically, what the state says is that if for every 1 year of instruction that a student has, they should have 1 year of academic growth. And they use STAR tests to compare that. So there's only growth measures for STAR tests that test 2 consecutive years. So no 3rd graders have a STAR growth measure because they didn't test in 2nd grade. And we only have growth measures in math and reading because we don't test science and social studies in consecutive years. So from 4th grade through Algebra 1 for math, there's a growth measure. And for 4th grade through 8th grade English, and then from English 1 to English 2, there's a growth measure. If a student stays the same, scores the same thing, or higher, they grew a year, they get a point. If they don't do that, they don't get a point. There's some ways in there that students can get half a point for maintaining the same level of achievement, but for the most part, it's designed for a student to get a point or not get a point. And then relative performance is the other piece of growth. Relative performance, if you look at this, at the chart, along the bottom is the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. So I'll use the district as an example. So let's say the district was at 75% economically disadvantaged. Then you would go across the bottom to 75%, and then you go up to the point where your student achievement was, the first measure that we talked about. And then if your dot falls on that average line, average is a C. It would be a C. It goes up from that based on how high you are, how much you are above the line, and down from that based on how far below the line you fall. So it's made to be scaled to compare you to other districts or other campuses that have the exact same percentage of low socioeconomic students that you have in your district. The last piece that is a measure is called closing gaps. Closing gaps is a piece of our accountability system that's made to be compliant with the federal government. It's part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. It measures all of our ethnicities and all of our student populations individually. So each ethnicity or each race, and then what all students who are special ed, who are English learners, who are economically disadvantaged, and who are either continuously or non-continuously enrolled. And it sets targets for each of those populations. The state sets targets for each of those populations, and then they do the math, and we either meet the targets or we don't meet the targets. It's a lot. Is there any questions about how those calculations are done before we transition into the campuses? Okay. So overall score calculation, you take those first three measures, student achievement, student growth, and relative performance. Whichever of those three is the highest counts as 70% of the weight of your overall score. And then that closing gaps, that ESSA compliance piece is always 30%. Okay, STAR scores. So I'm going to start off with a district summary and some general district information, and then we'll look at the campuses. So the reading scores improved at all grade levels at approaches and increased at all performance levels in grades 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Math scores improved at masters in grades 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. So that's significant. One of the things that we focused on all year last year was we called it pulling the rope. So if you think of having a rope laying across the floor, when you push the rope, it just kind of snakes up and the other end doesn't move. And that's kind of how we have historically functioned in education. We focus on our students who struggle the most, and we push them to succeed, and we move them. And we move some of the kids in the middle, but our higher end kids kind of stay in the same spot. So our focus this year was on pulling the rope at the high end and making sure that all of our students were hanging on to make sure everybody had gains. So when we see those increases at masters, it's indicative of the work that was put in to pull the rope. So writing scores improved in 7th grade. Writing continues to be a focus area for our district as a whole. And science scores improved at all grade levels it meets. Social studies improved at all 3 levels in both tested grades, which we'll look at here in just a second. So there's a lot of numbers on this slide, but what I wanted you to be able to see was the trend. So they're color-coded. The 2017 numbers are all in black. That's kind of our foundational year. And then after that, they are red if the number went down, green if the number increased, and black if the number stayed the same. So if you look, we'll use English 1 and English 2 as an example. At approaches, you can see we have a trend at approaches and meets that it shows a 3-year increase across the board. And then when you look at masters, you have that increase in English 2. So you can see where we have had growth and how much, if where we have had losses, where we have sustained those and their significance. So we did have a couple of grades that had losses this year, 3% at meets for 4th grade and 2% and for 5th grade. But if you look at our master's columns, we went up all the way down, with the exception of 2 grades where we held steady. And if you look at our approaches column, we went up at all grade levels. This graph is the same information. All I did was isolate the meets so you could see grade level performance. And if you compare the 2017, which is the first bar, to the 2019, which is the last bar, we had increases in those 3 years in every grade level. Some more significant than others. So if you look at 8th grade, there's a big jump in 8th grade. And English 1, there's a significant jump in English 1 as well. And then for our 3-year trend for math, it's the same thing. It's a lot of numbers, but if you look at the colors, it's to show growth pattern. So you can see that in our secondary math, starting with 6th grade and moving up, we have at approaches a 3-year growth trend. In 4th grade, we did dip a little bit, and in 5th grade, we dipped a little bit as well as at approaches, but in 3rd grade, we increased by 10%. And then when you look at meets, we had growth in 3rd and 4th grade, and then 7th through Algebra 1, and a 1% drop in 5th and 6th. And then at masters, we had growth. And if you really look, I know looking at the color coding, but look at the amount of growth. So in 3rd grade, we increased by 7% at masters. In 4th grade, 6%. 6% in 5th grade. We had a 1% drop in 6th. And then 7th was up by 2, lost a little bit in 8th, and increased by quite a bit in Algebra 1 as well. So those are our gains to be proud of. Then this is the, sorry. I bumped a lot. And then this is the same graph at meets. That's a 3-year comparison for our math scores. And you can see that in almost every grade level, if you compare 2017 to 2019 at our percentage of students at grade level, we've increased our percentage of students performing at grade level. 8th grade had a significant jump, and Algebra 1 had a significant jump. Okay, then we have science and writing. Writing is the first set. And you can see writing continues to be an area of focus for the district. We did have an increase in 7th grade at approaches. We had a bit of a dip at meets in both grades, and then we had a gain at masters in 7th grade. And then for science, we had gains in every grade at meets. And then we weren't as consistent in our performance at approaches and masters, so that'll be an area of focus for this upcoming school year. There we go. Social studies. Social studies has, if you look at 2019, we grew in both grades at every level, approaches, meets, and masters. So our performance improved across the board. All right, so that's the district summary. I'm going to switch over now. We're going to talk about individual campuses. So our highest performing campuses, we have out of our elementary schools, Central Elementary had gains in 3rd grade reading, 4th grade reading and math, and then Fair Meadows Elementary had gains in 3rd grade reading and math and 4th grade reading. Acton Elementary had gains in 3rd grade reading and math and 4th grade math. And then Hardin Intermediate School had gains in 5th grade reading and science and 6th grade math. Brandenburg had gains in 5th grade reading. Byrd Middle School, gains in 7th grade math, 8th grade reading, science, and social studies. Kennemer Middle School, this was their first year with the STEAM Academy with 6th graders on campus. Their 6th grade STEAM Academy kiddos excelled on their STAR tests, and we'll look at that in a second and all of the ones that they took. And then they also had gains in all of their 7th and 8th grade subjects. So we're going to start with our 3 campuses that were formerly IR. Acton will go first. So Acton was a 55, as I said earlier, last year, and they've moved up to a C, which is a 76, which is a C. The green indicates that their numbers increased, and that is the percentage by which they increased from 2018 to 2019. If the gain loss is in red, that is the loss that they had in that grade level. So you can see that with the exception of third grade reading, it approaches and meets. They had gains, often double-digit gains, in each grade, in each subject, and at each level. So third grade math, they had a 13% increase, 15% increase, 10% increase. Fourth grade writing increased by 20%, and so on. Alexander Elementary did well in third grade. Reading and math both improved. If you look at their third grade math, it improved by double digits across the board, 23%, 18%, 10%. They did have some drops in fourth grade reading and writing, which the campus leadership team is already addressing in their staffing and planning for next year. And fourth grade math had increases at all three levels, which has put them at a 67, what we project to be a 67 for next year, which will put them at a D. Hastings Elementary, as you can see, is almost all green. They had a slight loss in fourth grade reading of 3%, and they held steady in fourth grade math at 60%. But other than that, if you look at third grade math, increase of 31%, 30%, and 16% in 1 year's time is a tremendous growth. They were at a 52 last year, and we project them to be at 69 this year. Fair Meadows Elementary was at a 74 last year. We predict them to be at a 79 this year. You can see that their third grade reading and math grew almost across the board. They had a little bit of a drop at masters for third grade math. And then their fourth grade performance dipped a little at approaches and meets, and then improved at masters for reading and math. So fourth grade is something that they'll work on over the summer as far as planning for improvement for next year, and then how to maintain what they were able to achieve in third grade. Central Elementary was at a 78 last year. We predict them to be at an 80 this year, which will put them at a B. And as you can see at meets and masters, they had growth or held steady at every test and grade level except for fourth grade writing. They had a little bit of a dip there. And then in third grade reading and fourth grade math, they improved at approaches and a little bit of a dip in third grade math. So they'll work on this year maintaining their growth and addressing their areas of need. Merrifield, Merrifield Elementary, you can see had growth in third grade. So third grade reading and math and had some growth across the board. And then fourth grade reading and math, they dipped by 18% at approaches, 11% at meets, and 6% at masters in reading. And then math at 25% and 11%. We predict they're going to come in around a 67, which will put them in a D. The campus and district leadership team is already working together to come up with a plan to address concerns at fourth grade for next year. Then Smith Elementary was a 68 last year. We project them to be around a 66 this year. You can see that at approaches, they mostly did grow. They lost a few points in fourth grade math. And then if you look at masters, they did, again, across the board, they did well in third grade reading and math, but fourth grade, they lost at masters at 8%, 6%, and 4%. The campus is already, new leadership is already working to address issues and correct the staffing and whatnot to prepare for next year. And Hyman last year scored a 68. This year we're projecting them to be at a 59. That does put them in jeopardy of being IR, and we're planning as such. As you can see, they experienced losses across the board. We had some gains in fourth grade math at meets, and then at third grade math at masters, and fourth grade at Masters. But there will be support offered from the beginning of the year and planning that takes place throughout the summer to ensure they start off on the right foot at Hyman. Same thing for Bill Hart's. Oh, I'm sorry.
Why would you think it went down so much?
Why did their scores go down so much at Hyman?
What's the reason? We just know numbers, we don't have any explanation.
I can tell you score-wise why their scores went down.
Yeah, speak to the score-wise. I'll address the other part.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we give district assessments and we give benchmarks throughout the year. Let me go back to Hyman's. Their scores trended to be lower than the other campuses for most of the year. They were given supports, curriculum from the curriculum department, from their chief of schools. And as we moved into testing, their students tested and their scores went down. I don't know what else to explain. You're gonna have to help me out, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I understand the challenge that you have. And so I will address the part that Ms. Bonneau can't address and is not able to. She's doing a good job of trying to answer, but it's just not in her area. So, I have already made some adjustments from a personnel standpoint. It's one thing to have the plan and have the support, but it has to be executed. And so we have to look at the campus level administration to determine the level of execution. And so that's where it starts, that's where it ends. And so that's the quick and fast area to pinpoint over a period of time. We definitely had a sense that this was probably gonna occur. We have been meeting throughout the course of the year, have been having some pretty specific direct conversations. And so I've made some changes, and we're gonna move forward and turn the page and get some better results. But that was the.
I know we do benchmarks and all that kind of stuff. Do you think you kind of see something's going wrong?
We do. We look at a lot of data during the course of the year, and if the data is trending in a negative direction, then that triggers myself, the chief of schools, and others to go into support mode. And we did indeed do that at this campus, and we do that. That's just a normal practice for us. But again, it has to be executed at the campus level with consistency, with fidelity, and on an everyday, regular basis. And so when that is in question, then we have to address it.
Are we ready? Okay, so the next one is Bill Hart's. Bill Hart's last year was at a 72. As you can see, they had some drops, and especially in fourth grade, but they had some in third grade as well. Third grade math is their test that went up consistently. Last year they were at a 72. This year we project them to be around a 55, which will put them below the marker to be IR as well. So we're planning aggressively with them as well. Chief of schools is working with the principal, and we're working to ensure that they're set up to start the year successfully in August. Good. Okay. Click. Okay, this is an elementary school summary. So again, it's a lot of numbers, but I wanted you to be able to see how the campuses looked right next to one another. We don't have that view in another spot. If you look at your printout, the numbers that are bolded indicate the highest performing campus in that grade level at that level. So for third grade reading, Fair Meadows was the highest performing elementary school at approaches, and then Central was highest at meets and masters. At third grade math, Central Elementary was highest performing at all three levels. Fourth grade reading, Acton and Fair Meadows tied for highest performing campuses. And then Central had meets and masters. Fourth grade math, Acton was highest performing along with Fair Meadows. Fair Meadows was highest at meets, and Central was highest at masters. Hardin Intermediate School. So we're switching over to the intermediates. Hardin Intermediate was an 80 last year. We predict them to be at an 80 again this year, so they'll have a B. As you can see, they had growth in several areas, and they had a couple of dips as well. So they grew in 4th grade reading at approaches and masters. They grew in 5th grade math all the way across the board, 10% at masters. In science, they were flat at approaches, but grew at meets and masters. And then you can see 6th grade reading had a bit of a dip. And then 6th grade math increased 7%, 2%, and 3%. Brandenburg Intermediate, last year was at an 81. This year we predict they're going to come in at a 72, which will put them as a C. As you can see, they had some gains in 5th grade reading, and then they had gains in masters in all of their 5th grade tests. They did experience some losses in their other tests. The building leadership is already working to remedy what they see as the gaps and address the issues to ensure that their students perform at their maximum capabilities next year. Daniel, last year was at a 70. This year we project them to be at a 71. You can see that their 5th grade reading, math, and science scores dipped at approaches, and meets. And then their 6th grade scores came up or held steady, except at masters they dropped by 3%. The intermediate summary, you can see Hardin was the highest performing campus in 5th grade reading and math at all 3 levels. And then Kennemer, with the STEAM Academy, was the highest performing campus in 6th grade reading at all 3 levels and 6th grade math at approaches and meets, but Hardin beat them in masters. Byrd Middle School, so we switched to the middle schools. Byrd last year had an accountability score of an 89. This year we project they're going to be at an 85. You can see they took a little bit of a dip in 7th grade reading with a drop of 3% at approaches and meets and 6% at masters. And then in 7th grade writing, down 5% and 6% at approaches and meets and up 1% at masters. And then 8th grade math, they're down 13% at masters. Other than that, they had increases across the board with some places where they held steady. And Algebra 1, they're going to hold steady at 100%. No matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to score higher than 100%. And then 97% at meets is going to be a tough one to top as well. And then Kennemer Middle School, who has the STEAM Academy this year, so you do see 2 6th grade lines there for 6th grade reading and 6th grade math. And you can see that their students performed, they don't have comparison data yet, but their students did extremely well in 6th grade. And then as you look across the board at 7th grade and 8th grade, they have almost all green. 8th grade science at meets is their only small dip of 2%. If you look at their gains, they have several in there that are double digits, 11% growth at reading at approaches, 12% growth at reading and meets, 18% in Algebra 1 at masters. And that's going to enable them to score a 79 this year, which is 6 points ahead of where they were last year, and should put them at a C. Reed Middle School last year was at a 74. We predict they'll be at a 75 this year. You can see their data is very green as well. They had a little bit of a dip in Algebra 1 at approaches and masters, and in 8th grade science, they dropped 6% at masters, but beyond that, they had growth in every test and every level. And again, some of those growth measures are double digits, 10% increase in 7th grade math at approaches, 11% in social studies at approaches, and 12% at meets. Here's your middle school summary. You can see that Kennemer was the highest scoring campus at all 3 levels in 7th grade reading. And then Byrd was the highest performing campus in all 3 levels in 7th grade math, 8th grade reading, and 8th grade math. Kennemer tied them for 8th grade reading at approaches. All right, and then to DHS. So, Duncanville High School had growth pretty much across the board. They had a dip in biology of 2% at approaches and 1% at masters. Last year, they had a 73, which gave them met standard. This year, we're projecting they're going to have an 86, which will put them at a B. Well into a B, yeah. So they did their campus did a great job. All right, and then just again in summary, as a reminder, our 3 IR campuses, we project all 3 of them will come well out of IR at a 76, a 67, and a 69. And then the district summary, we improved in every one of our measures, which we project will give us a score of an 84, which will put the district at a B for the year. Any questions?
Any questions for Mrs. Badon? Jackie?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on this particular chart.
Yes, ma'am.
On the fourth. Okay.
So are you on reading?
Meets.
Read.
Meets.
Yes.
So fourth grade is 7%.
So let me make a correction. So I had an error on the chart, on this chart, and this chart fed that graph when I corrected the error on this chart, and I didn't realize it till I was literally standing up here, nothing like having that thought in the back of your head, like, oops-a-daisy. I didn't correct it on this one. So the data actually should have come from here.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Yeah.
Much better.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Renee?
I just have a comment. I just want to commend the staff and Dr. Smith. What I want to say to you all is when Dr. Smith came here 3 years ago now, going into your 4th year, we had 7 schools that were in IR, and the accountability system wasn't the same. We didn't have an A through F system. It was very clear to him that we wanted a strategic plan to improve these goals, these scores. Last year, it was very discouraging to all of us, including him, when we had 3, particularly the 2 schools that the bond money had gone to. That was really, in the public, very disappointing because the public had given money for those schools. I know how hard it is. Maybe I don't know how hard it is, but I've been there. Know that every deliberate thing that you do to try to improve the kids, the scores and stuff, is because we have put pressure on him, who puts pressure on his team, who puts pressure on the principals, who puts pressure on you all. And I hope that all the paperwork, all the meetings, all the conferences with staff and stuff, that now you can see that it was deliberate and there's a payoff to it because our kids are the benefactors of all of this. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for all your hard work. And this is just the beginning, but we're happy. We're very happy up here at the top. I want you to know that.
Well said, Renee.
I just want to, I've been sitting on this board a long time, looking at these scores every year. And man, they're amazing this year. Thank you, and I just say, hell yes.
That's our Phil.
Y'all work and work and work, and we know where it comes from, and just thank you. You're helping our kids get where I just knew they could be, and I know we can do even more. So we're just scratching the surface, but thank you, because these are amazing scores. Thank you.
We've only just begun, is that not? No, we started 3 years ago, didn't we?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And thank you, Dr. Smith and staff. We do appreciate you. And make sure your staff knows.
Just want to say thank you, Madam President and board members, for your support. The credit definitely goes to the many individuals that are sitting in the audience, but Also the teachers, of course, who are really committed. They were able to stay focused, stay above the fray. There's always a lot of chatter and negative conversation out there that sometimes can be hard to overcome, but I was so proud of the staff that they stayed focused and locked in on what we could control. And the end result is what you see, and so we're just getting started, and we're building that foundation, and I thank you all for your support.
We thank you, and thank you, Ms. Bonneau. You have a way of simplifying the hardest things, that crazy math and all of that. But you've been a teacher. You've got that teacher voice. And thank you. Any more questions for that? Okay. Now we move into the report of bullying. We have a system in process, and presenter is Joe Copeland.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Smith. I have for your review our online bullying reporting system. One of our strategic goals focuses on operational excellence. We have not been able to provide a platform for our parents, students, staff, and are not able to report incidents of bullying or harassment through our current district online system. The absence of an online reporting system, this is a little shorter than what I would prefer, so sorry. The absence of an online reporting system presents a significant risk to our students and the district. How do we know? We have received feedback from our parents, members of the School Health Advisory Committee, which is SHAC, our campus administrative teams, and counselors. We are concerned that our process does not provide timely, critical data to ensure the potential risk is addressed and managed proactively according to the state and local requirements. What process did we use to address this issue? We collaborated with the technology department, school leadership, and other key stakeholders to develop an online reporting and monitoring system. Well, what are we trying to accomplish? We need to provide an online reporting system that everyone has access to, provide campus-specific designations, meaning those reports go directly to campuses, thorough investigations, parent communications, student intervention plans and preparations, monitoring of timelines, centralized approvals through our student services departments of all investigations, a centralized record keeping of all claims, regardless of the outcomes. As you look on your left, you'll see our former design with the Stay Alert logo on the left, upper left-hand corner, which is a third-party system that we have utilized, and it has not provided timely reports of incidents to our campus administrations. Our current design on the right side will provide direct notifications to all of our campuses, all our campus administration teams once a report is submitted. You'll notice there's a blue bar toward the bottom, right above the D and the ASA. Once that blue bar is clicked, the standard form will open to report an incident. This form on the left side will be utilized by parents, and they will be able to see, and I will show you a larger form here. This particular form will allow them to have identify the date of the incident, the person it's been reported to or who has been notified, the campus that the incident is going to, where it actually happened, and then on another page here, it will give us, anonymously or otherwise, the name of the person that's reporting the incident, the victim, the accused person, and any witnesses, along with a classification, an initial classification that a parent or guardian can choose. It may not be the outcome. However, we start the process by providing an actual description of the incident, along with choosing the actual, what they think is the actual type of bullying. You can't see a submit button on the bottom, Once the submit button is pushed, an alert goes to all campuses whom are going to receive a bullying investigation. And you'll see a flow chart here that we've created just to give you a crazy, hopefully an easy visual for you that gives you an idea that simultaneously when that submit button is pushed through our online system on our website, several things happen at one time. The campus will receive an online notification. At that time, the Student Services Department will be alerted, which will include myself and our Student Services Director to provide oversight. Once the campus administration team for that campus that's been selected, they receive an email notification. At that time, they begin the investigation, or it could be the next business day. That file is also kept and archived for us in the system through a particular folder that's designated for that campus exactly. Once it's received, the 10-day investigation timeline begins. Parents are notified in writing. Teachers are notified. Immediate implementation or interventions are provided, meaning keeping children away, notifying them, maybe changing schedules, etc. During the investigative process, counselors are also alerted, just in case those students need to have a sit down and talk about it. Once the investigation is complete, all of the documents are uploaded in a campus folder and a student services folder that we have access to. Once that is done, the investigation is complete, we have identified the type of bullying it is. We are able to notify parents or guardians, and consequences may be whatever we have to provide to whatever information we provide to parents. We will also notify the accused of if there are consequences that have been administered. So all of this happens simultaneously along with campus teams following up. They have done a wonderful job doing that. We just haven't archived it the way we really need to. So this is just a flow chart to give you an idea of what the process will look like. And on the last slide here, this is our Student Services online website. This online website provides all of the standardized forms that our campus administrative teams will utilize to notify parents of what's going on, from the beginning to the end to the completion, to also providing stay-aware agreements that are signed by children or their parents, and teachers are notified, along with having a bullying checklist and decision-making process available for every administrator in the district. So we're trying to streamline our process and provide a very efficient way for our teams to address the issue that hasn't been addressed as thoroughly in the past. And I will open it up for any questions that you have.
Questions for Mr. Copeland?
Looks very good to me. I think the fact that the form is online and any employee can access it.
I'm sorry, it won't be any employee. I wasn't clear there. It'll be for campus administrations. Everyone doesn't have access to it.
So a teacher has to report it to an administrator?
Yes, ma'am. Or they can go online if they choose to, report it online, but they also have access to campus administration, so they can always walk to an office or have a meeting impromptu and talk about it as well. But that is not open to all teaching staff. It's just campus administration. Some may have an opportunity, but just depends on their role in the district.
Any more comments? Renee?
So the process will be the same for everybody on every campus.
Yes, ma'am, that is our hope, and we started training a few months ago. So we will also provide more and more insight, get more feedback from our campus teams to help refine the practice. But yes, ma'am, that's our goal.
Okay, I have another question for you.
Okay.
In your other district where you were, I think that your district had been commended for a bullying program. Was this a part of how, in your other districts, of some things that you had done?
Yes, ma'am, this is the beginning.
Okay.
As we stated earlier with our report that you heard from Mrs. Bonneau, we have a lot of work to do, but this is what we have available at this particular time, and it took us a while to put this together to make it an online. Yes, so the process will improve as we continue. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Yep.
Any more?
I have a question. Can you explain to me, what does stay away from mean?
A stay away agreement, it's where the accused person and the victim agree to stay away from each other, meaning they have a meeting with mom, dad, guardians, administrator, or counselor if they're available, or all three, and they stress the fact that it is important that you stay away from each other during this process. And if it's not in writing, guess what? We don't know if it really occurred. So our goal is to have it in writing, give parents a copy, and then make sure that we follow up with those children as well. So putting it in writing gives us an opportunity to keep it
Thank you.
real simple. So,
Great.
yes.
Any more? Thank you, Mr. Copeland.
You're so welcome.
It's now time for our communications from citizens. Being none, we thank you for coming to this meeting, and there are no other items of business. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.